everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Julian.
I'm Madeline.
And I'm Emilio. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we would love to hear from you. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok for updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio we record at Sleepless Cinematic Pod.
In addition to these main episodes, we record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. And while we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love. We're going sleep for a discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we begin a new cycle of episodes highlighting offbeat musicals with a category we call Viewnanimous, where we revisit a movie the three of us have all seen before and see if our initial opinions still stand, if they've changed, or if discussing the movie will make us see things that we didn't before.
And we are kicking off this cycle with a film that is near and dear to my heart, which is Little Shop of Horrors, the 1986 film adaptation of the hit off-Broadway musical, directed by Muppeteer Frank Oz and starring Rick Moranis, Levi Stubbs, Ellen Greene, and many other amazing cast members.
Yes, and I'm very excited to introduce our guest today. We didn't grow up too far from one another in the Chicagoland area, but it took us meeting in Brooklyn almost 15 years ago to actually get to know one another. And what a special human he is. Amongst his many credits as an actor, he traveled the country with the Broadway tour of Mamma Mia and was in a production of Daddy Longlegs off Broadway. He is also an in-demand performance coach and the creator of the Inspired Actions method that helps empower performers to crush auditions and do their best work. He is also an accomplished composer with several well-regarded musicals, including Radioactive and The Violet Hour to his name. He is the recipient of an Ebb Award alongside his writing partner, Eric Price, and is a featured songwriter for the Apple TV show Central Park. It's so funny. I know this guy so well, and reading this back, I'm just like, so cool. Alongside his life partner and my musical collaborator and buddy, Chris Ames, there is literally no artistic endeavor the two of them couldn't achieve at the highest level. They are the definition of a power couple in the arts. He has been a dear friend for a number of years. I've always been in awe of his talents and his output. I've been honored to have weaved in and out artistically on some things with him in that time as well. So it's a personal treat to have him join us today. Will Reynolds, welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast.
Thank you so much. That was
Welcome.
far too kind. Thank you. You know, what's crazy is that I was just talking to Chris about one of our first dates, and which is also right when I met you, because you guys were roommates. We went to see Little Shop of Horrors at BAM, and Frank Oz did a talkback. It was literally in our first month or so of dating.
What? That is amazing.
And we met Frank Oz.
Incredible.
Okay. Maybe that will come back up in our conversation. Oh, yeah. That's amazing.
And then do you remember that while Chris was in that apartment, he was building puppets of giant killer slugs for a play in New York? So there's all this connectivity of puppets and theater. That's crazy.
You are so right.
Remember the puppets, the giant killer slugs?
My goodness.
Didn't have as much success as Little Shop of Horrors.
Sure.
But Giant Killer Slugs almost has the same scan as Little Shop of Horrors. So there you go.
Definitely.
There we go. Well, and not to be confused, I think just segues us perfectly into our next moment here, which is that Little Shop of Horrors is not to be confused with a film called The Shop on Main Street, which is like a Czech new wave film from 1965. This is a very powerful film. Has anybody here seen this movie?
I don't know this one.
No.
It's one of those movies that's very much about like, what do you do when you are faced with a crisis of conscience? Country versus, personal dilemma. It's a really beautiful, powerful film. It is very different from Little Shop of Horrors, although just saying that makes me realize there are maybe some shared themes, but they are different films. Do not confuse The Shop on Main Street with Little Shop of Horrors. I think Skid Row is not in Main Street. So definitely
That is true.
Yes.
And I will say that speaking of shops, this film, Little Shop of Horrors, is also not to be confused with the shop around the corner, the Ernst Lubitsch film from 1940. This movie that I really enjoy, starring Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan. My parents also love this movie and often are like, oh, they remade this with Tom Hanks. And I was like, are you talking about You've Got Mail? A lot of people really like that movie.
Yeah. Your parents are like, no, we want the original.
Like, no, absolutely
OG
not. Shop around the corner. That's the one to watch.
Which is also inspired the Broadway musical She Loves Me, just going to say, is based on that story as well.
Yeah, and we just finished a cycle of discussing rom-coms, and I mean that was on my list for not to be confused as well. But as a campy movie with a mix of like fantasy, action, and comedy from 1986, Little Shop of Horrors is not to be confused with Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, great. Oh, great.
Yeah,
I love this. Yeah.
Yes, the John Carpenter film from the same year. I haven't seen it, but just knowing what I do about John Carpenter in general, it's, not a crazy thing to suggest. It doesn't seem like a crazy suggestion to me that there'd be some aesthetic similarities between these films.
Well, I own it, so you can borrow it and watch it whenever you like.
Good to know. Thank you. Yeah, I love John Carpenter, but I have not seen enough films by him.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Madeline, what is Little Shop of Horrors about? What are we working with here?
Well, on the 23rd day of the month of September, in an early year of a decade not too long before our own, the human race suddenly encountered a deadly threat to its very existence. And this terrifying enemy surfaced, as such enemies often do, in the seemingly most innocent and unlikely of places. That unlikely place is Skid Row, a fictional slum of New York City, which is home to Mushnick's Flower Shop. In the basement of said florist lives Seymour Krelborn, a meek and mild-mannered employee who has recently acquired a fascinating fly trap in the wholesale flower district during a total eclipse of the sun. Ding! He christens this plant Audrey II, named after his coworker and object of his affections, Audrey I. After putting Audrey II in the shop window, customers flock to the store, and suddenly both the flower shop and Seymour himself are catapulted to success and stardom. However, Seymour soon discovers that the plant needs human blood to sustain itself and grow, and he must decide if making a deal with this devilish plant and earning the affection of Audrey I is worth the horrifying acts he must commit to sustain this otherworldly creature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very well said.
I just love that a movie directed by Yoda begins with an opening crawl.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, Crawley, my good friend from Star Wars.
Yeah.
I love your work.
I think you can't not relate it to Star Wars when that happens. And I think, Little Shop of Horrors is, despite being mostly pretty different, for that detail, kind of a fitting movie to do that with.
They both have to do with space.
Yes, in some small ways. Absolutely. Yeah. Will, you had said that this was a musical that's very near and dear to your heart. Can you dig into that a little bit? Like, what is Little Shop to you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely as, a little feral theater kid, a movie like this just sparks the imagination. And, what is there not to love? As a young theater kid just watching this, there's also so much connectivity to, Rick Moranis. I was also obsessed with Ghostbusters. And Rick Moranis was a star of that. And then Steve Martin, like there were all these people in it that were in other things that I adored and just had this kinship towards. And then, Menken and Ashman are really at the core of why I write musicals, because we have to remember and acknowledge that Little Shop of Horrors is the reason why there is a Disney Renaissance of all of the movie musicals. We would not have Little Mermaid. We would not have Aladdin. We would not have Beauty and the Beast if it wasn't for the smash success of Little Shop of Horrors. But as a musical theater writer, and I'll explain maybe why in a second, but we also wouldn't have Little Shop of Horrors if they hadn't had a flop in their very first musical, God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. It was a total flop off Broadway.
Kurt Vonnegut.
Yes, yeah. And they were both really down that their first show didn't make it. And so Ashman was like, can we just do something fun? We tried something, we tried something a little more highbrow and serious, and let's do something fun. And he pitched it to Menken. And, from a flop to a hit. And then David Geffen introduced them to Disney. And, 3 years later after the film, it was The Little Mermaid. And those are the songs and the kind of songwriting that informs so much of
yeah.
the sort of next wave of musicals and musical theater writers and song form. And, there's also the connectivity of how Somewhere That's Green is part of your world. And we can get into that later. We can save that. We can just dangle that. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, I just recognized great musical theater songwriting and storytelling and character and their ability to use pastiche and all these different styles. I just recognized something core in what I wanted to do and be. And, when you see those things as a young person, you would never forget them. So, and then it's just hysterical and it's just so fun. So yeah, lots of reasons.
I love this.
Love it.
You hit on something that was actually very friend of mine for me. I did a podcast with friend of our podcast, Anna Stone.
Hi, Anna.
Hey, Anna.
Hello, Anna.
And
Hi, Anna.
I dug into The Little Mermaid because we were talking about The Little Mermaid. And the Howard Ashman, Alan Menken of it all was really fun for me. And that this was a huge part of their origin story to me is like so central. But I'll mention very briefly here too, my first exposure to this was I was a consultant for a high school production of this because my sister, the high school that she went to, her senior year was putting it on. I was in 8th grade at the time, but I was already like growing and getting into guitar, and I had some pedals, and the guitar player in the pit was trying to figure out ways to like get crazy sonic sounds for when the plant was eating people.
You're like, I've got some ideas.
And I was like, you know what? I have some ideas. And I still have a lot of affection for that guy. Pat Fitzgerald was his name. And so I came in and like consulted this. And so I got to watch the show a lot, even though I was not actively a part of it. I was just coming in and being like, press this or try this or turn this knob, move your foot really fast with this. And so that was my exposure to it. And I remember thinking it was so cool as a kid. So, and I'll get into it more later.
Awesome. I first saw this movie, I'm going to say I was like 13, maybe 13 or 14. This movie taught me what a masochist was, actually. I watched this with my parents, and for once, I can place this a little bit more specifically.
Ooh, go Julian.
I'm pretty sure I was 12 when I saw this. And the reason I can say this is I remember talking about this in my confirmation class at church.
Get down.
Talking about this movie. Anyway,
exactly what you do in confirmation.
Exactly.
class.
You talk about masochism. But I watched this with my parents for the first time, and I'm watching the scene with Bill Murray, and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't like at 12. At 12, I don't think it quite connects with you what's happening.
Now it's hysterical.
Exactly.
One of the funniest parts
I was
of the
like,
movie.
yes, very funny, but I
Candy
don't
bar.
understand why he's enjoying it so much. And my parents, God bless them, have to explain to me what masochism is. So that's my first exposure to this movie. I was like 12-ish, I'm going to say. But I came to really love this movie because I, like your sister, did this show in high school. I was Crystal,
Yes.
which was very fun. It's so fun to be one of the three girls.
The urchins.
Yeah, they're my favorite part of the movie, and it's such a fun role. I did audition for Audrey. I was disappointed that I did not get it, but Crystal was a blast. So
Nice.
I cannot be too upset about it. And I think that if you do this show in high school, you have the like beautiful curse of loving this show forever because it's such a fun show to do. But this movie is just, it's beautifully weird. It's like everything that I love out of a movie. And I hadn't seen it in a while. I don't think I'd watched it probably since I was a teenager, maybe early 20s.
Same for me. Yeah.
And this has been on my Letterboxd top 4. And after we rewatched Broadcast News, I was like, do I want to add Broadcast News to my Letterboxd top 4? What am I going to bump? Am I going to bump Little Shop? And I rewatched this and I'm like, I can't bump Little Shop. I love this movie so much.
I love all that.
Yeah. And I mean, and this is a Viewnanimous episode, so we had all seen it before. And I don't know for sure. I mean, I don't know if you said how old you were, Will, when you first saw Little Shop of Horrors.
I don't even know. I feel like it's one of those things. It just feels like one of those pieces of millennial lore that just was just always on. I just feel like I feel like it was seminal for me. I just feel like many times a year we're watching Gremlins, we're watching Little Shop of Horrors. I don't know, Bill Murray, Rick Moranis. Like I was so into Ghostbusters. And so like it was very important to me. And I wonder how much of Bill Murray's scene was totally improvised, by the way. I'm really curious about how much of that they were just like, go crazy.
I think we can get into that, but Frank Oz does say most of it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Okay. It's like maybe it's hard to tell exactly when your first exposure was, but maybe safe to guess it was around the same time that it was for me. I watched it for the first time at age 11, and the circumstance for seeing it was actually an interesting feeder of a few formative movie experiences in my childhood, which was that it was the end of 5th grade, and it was during a period, I mean, there were a couple different occasions for this. Once it was like field day got rained out, but then we also like we had graduated and we're just biding our time until we were sent home for the summer. I'm pretty sure it was the day that field day got rained out that we just stayed inside and watched movies, and this was one of them.
That's kind of nuts.
Yeah.
That's like a pretty...
That might have been me, though. Wait, actually, my middle school and my show choir director in middle school, Tammy O'Reilly, who I adore, we would watch so many movies. She would play a movie musical. And I actually think it might have been then. I want to think it was then. Yeah. So same thing. I think I might have been an in-school movie, same as you.
I think this is kind of a crazy movie to show to a classroom.
Truly.
Yeah. Truly. I don't know,
particularly like a 5th grade classroom.
Yes, but this was like... Well, I think the reason why that was a movie even in the selection was because we were asked to bring movies we wanted to pitch to the class. Like those of us who had DVDs were invited to bring our own selections, and someone brought Little Shop of Horrors, and we held a vote in that one. Yeah, so we watched it in 5th grade. I don't think anyone was scarred by the movie or anything like that.
I don't think it's a scarring movie. I just think it's slightly inappropriate.
Yeah, like those teachers I had in 5th grade too were also like people who, you know, in like a good way, gave us a lot of material that other adults might have thought a 5th grader was too young for. I think they, in a respectful, maturity-inducing way. So maybe there was some of the same thinking there, but that was when I saw it, and I think, you know, I kind of just experienced it at that time. I wasn't really at much of an age for interpreting it yet. I had fun. I had seen Ghostbusters by that age. I certainly enjoyed Rick Moranis. I forgot about Bill Murray, actually. And then the Steve Martin part, I think that was my favorite part of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a delight.
Oh, obsessed.
Totally. But then there was certainly a lot that I either missed or just didn't retain from the first viewing. And so 18 years later, we've all seen it again, and now we're discussing it. And so how does this movie hold up for us on a rewatch, however long the time has been since the last viewing?
It holds up awesome.
Yeah.
It's super, super fun. I also, and we'll get into this with some of the questions and discussions, there were themes in this that just totally went right over my head. So I'm excited to dig into this further. Delightful. Really fun.
Yeah, I had a blast revisiting this, and I watched it twice because I watched it once over the weekend, and then I watched it again with the commentary, and then I watched the alternate ending, and then I watched the alternate ending with the commentary. So I've been really engrossed in this movie in the last few days, and I just can't get enough of it.
Yeah, I have so much of it memorized in my heart drive, and so I feel like watching it again just gives you that just like deep bath of nostalgia.
I don't want that to go overlooked. You just said heart drive.
That was great.
In my heart
That was
drive,
beautiful.
Yes.
You should copyright that.
Yeah, you should.
But yeah, so for me, there were certain things I remembered almost beat for beat from the first time seeing it. Obviously, a lot that I did not remember too. Sorry to be this guy this time, but it hit me a little differently. I think it's, it was in my past, but I didn't have like a conditioned appreciation for it. The way that's, Madeline, you said that like if you've performed the show in high school, it just sticks with you.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have much of a relationship with it before. And I think that my general experience of it was like watching the movie. There are a lot of things I find entertaining, and other than like little quibbles, maybe not much that you can critique it for in terms of quality, but there are some ways where I feel like it may just not quite be my cup of tea.
I mean, perhaps I will make this accusation several times throughout this cycle. You're not like a big musical person.
Right. But it's there are like without saying exactly what just yet. But there are some things coming up that are a little more down my offbeat alley.
I'll make this argument throughout this episode. This is the quintessential offbeat musical.
Mm-hmm.
We discussed a lot about what was our Viewnanimous going to be. And we were like, is this actually too much of a success to be an offbeat musical? And I would argue no, because its success as a cult classic really did kind of come out of nowhere. And
Absolutely.
And so I really think that this is a really important part of the conversation that we're going to have over the next few months. But to that same point, like what Will was saying, this film also really informs a lot of musicals to come.
Yeah.
And so now I think watching this for someone like you that is not as like doesn't have as strong of a connection with musicals more broadly, this may feel like it's more in that typical genre, even though I would argue this film did it all first, so it still counts.
Yeah, that's a totally fair way to put it. And I think that it is hard to really, sit in those shoes that one would have been in 1986 when this is, as a film, brand new. It had already been on Broadway beforehand. But just to,
off Broadway, yes.
Off Broadway.
Thank you for correcting me on that.
First off, then regular off.
Yes. It had been
the WPA theater. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it had been performed. It was part of the zeitgeist for a little while, leading up to the movie. And so, like, the novelty of it, if you were living through that time, it would have really been. It's like we were talking a bit about Star Wars earlier. It's kind of like, what must it have been like to be an audience hearing Darth Vader's iconic line from The Empire Strikes Back?
Mm.
We can't really know now, but if you lived in 1980, you lived it. I actually feel like that's a pretty natural segue into a discussion question I thought of, which is some of it's about the zeitgeist, but about the film itself, the story really. It's set in the early 1960s, and there are a number of ways that the film establishes this period detail. There is a nominal mention of JFK early in the movie. I felt like Audrey's aspirations, as she describes them in Somewhere That's Green, felt very of the time, and a number of costumes in the movie, make it very clear, when we're talking about it's the part of the 60s that hasn't really shaken off the 50s just yet. So some of these period details, in just telling a story set in that time, they may be evergreen, pun 1,000% intended.
All your puns are intended.
Exactly. But other things in the film may seem a little bit dated. And so as a period piece, like, how do you think Little Shop registers today? And like, do you feel like the way that it landed in 1986 as a depiction of this period of time is similar to how it has lasted?
This is a musical that is based on a micro budget film that was released and produced and filmed essentially at the time that this movie in 1986 is set.
Yes, good point.
So there's a little bit of honoring the era in which this was initially presented to audiences.
Have you guys seen the 1960 film?
I've seen bits of it. Have you seen it, Will?
Nope. Mm-mm.
I have seen it. I think it's really interesting. As it's made in like 2 days.
It's crazy.
Which is
I heard that
insane.
too.
It's black
Jack
and white,
Nicholson.
right?
Yeah, it's black and white.
Oh, Jack Nicholson.
Is in. He
Right.
plays like the Bill Murray character.
Yes, yeah.
I think it's his first film.
One of his first films.
Yeah,
I
right?
think it's really worth watching. And it's not that long and it's on YouTube. I meant to rewatch it for this conversation, but considering I rewatched the
You were deep in the
1986
other
film
one, yeah.
like 2.5 times, I didn't have time. I think it's really worth watching. It's different in like every way possible. Julian, you might actually prefer it. This movie.
You might be right about that. But make my point totally clear, like, I don't dislike the 1986 version. I like it. I just think that there are ways it's not exactly my personal taste.
I also feel like the 1980s was a moment where we were really looking back at the like 1950s. You mentioned the JFK reference.
Mm-hmm.
His assassination in November of 1963 was a real turning point, I think, for the country from a perspective of morale.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to place this story in this time where you had a lot of optimism in the country, that we were coming out of the 1950s. It was a very consumer-friendly time. The 1980s was a very consumer-friendly time as well. So there is a little bit of us kind of looking back at a similar era in our country.
Totally.
And I think the movie actually it doesn't hit you over the head, but when it presents these things to you, I think it's both kind of kitschy, but also very aware of the fact that we're on a 30-year cycle.
Yeah.
And we're kind of back in it.
I mean, this movie is like a cartoon in the best way possible. It's meant to be very cartoony. So
Sure.
I don't think it's trying to necessarily like feel authentically 1960.
Yeah.
It's trying to plant you in that time vaguely.
Plant,
but
nice.
Exactly. That was not intended when I said it, but I'll still call it intended. I think about Grease also.
Sure.
You know, that movie comes out in 1978, and when we talked about Grease years ago, we talked about the fact that it's set in the 1950s, but that when I watched it when I was 8, I didn't think of it as a period piece. To me, it was just like, this movie came out before I was born, and it looks like it was set before I was born, and all those times feel the same to an 8-year-old. So I didn't realize when I first saw Grease that it was a period piece. I feel like that's the closest comp I can think of, but I do think that this movie feels more intentionally like, let's roll it back in a way that I didn't pick up on Grease. I think Grease does that intentionally as well, but it's not something I picked up on when I was watching it as a kid.
Howard Ashman said he wanted it to be the dark side of Grease. That was a quote of his about it. Yeah.
I like
that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I think why the 60s is such a really unique era to place this in all this sort of American consumerism and this sort of, American dream time, all of the get the car and the toaster, Audrey's vision for what
Sure.
success
The Tupperware,
is. Seymour, all the lyrics in Feed Me Seymour, where it's like, how about a Cadillac car? How about a room at the Ritz? It is all about being an American success, an economic success. And, the entire number, we know what kind of story and what kinds of themes to be listening for, because the opening number is not about plants are cool and plants are fun, but plants might kill you in the end. That's not the opening number. The opening number is Skid Row.
Skid Row, yeah.
Down on Skid Row. Poor. All my life, I've always been poor. I keep asking God what I'm for. Sweep that floor, kid. It is all about the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
And what are you willing to do to get the thing you want? And musicals are driven by strong wants. The idea of an I want song is something that came out of the writing tradition of Menken and Ashman, and his first song, Grow For Me. All he wants is this plant to grow, because if he can get this plant to grow, he can impress the girl he likes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has no idea what then that will turn into if he gives the plant what it needs, but he is willing to do whatever it takes because he is impossibly oppressed. And so I do find there's like a deep, deep moral and allegorical richness to it that only sort of, I don't know if it's not satire, parody, not parody, it's satire.
It's more satire, I think.
It's not
lining
parody.
up. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then just musically, like the urchins, their names are Crystal, Ronette, and Chiffon, which are literally the names of the girl groups, right? The Phil Spector girl groups.
Exactly.
And then, they do
wow.
so much of the music you can point to, oh, they're doing a this, oh, they're doing a that, their take on this and that. And I thought they do such a great job of pastiching the sounds of the era and using it in a way that supports and drives the storytelling.
And also that you have one of the four tops providing the
Oh my
plant's
goodness.
voice.
Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Let's go.
Actually, Emilio, my husband Chris plays and has played in bands with Emilio and is an incredible soul singer from Detroit. And he was like, why aren't I on this podcast? Because I am Levi Stubbs. He's like, this is my music. I'm like, because it's Broadway, honey, and this is my lane.
It's off
But
Broadway.
he should be here too.
And I know 100%. Chris, my apologies. Drew, my apologies. Drew actually had a personal connection to Levi Stubbs, a rather deep one. So yes, the Levi Stubbs of this I absolutely love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like this angle of looking at it. I think that just watching it, I guess sometimes something I don't want to say struggle with while watching musicals, but maybe it's just like I'm less accustomed to the way that this occurs is that I have like a big realism itch when I watch movies, and I whether to gauge something based on realism or not. And I think that with musicals you have to suspend your sense of realism
100%.
1,000%. Yeah.
But then there's just sometimes I find it a little difficult to determine exactly where do you how much realism, not in the sense of mode of storytelling, but in the sense of like how much of the real world is acknowledged and understood in the story do you kind of is like a standard expectation.
Well, I think that the fact that this movie sets up a fictional neighborhood of New York City, like from the very beginning, and it's introduced in this, not the very opening song, because that's the Little Shop theme, but a very early song. You're setting the scene in this place that feels like it's the 007 soundstage. Like it does feel like a soundstage. Right. It almost feels like it's they've been shrunk down, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids style.
Rick Moranis.
That's a few years later.
It almost feels like they've been shrunk down and put in like a dollhouse neighborhood. Like it doesn't feel like real New York because they're not trying to make it real New York.
This is not Eyes Wide Shut even.
Right.
But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You said it really well earlier, Madeline. It is a cartoon. And I'm with you, Julian. I have a realism thing sometimes too for certain styles of movies. Mm-hmm. This is one of those where I'm grabbing a little bit from everybody here. It just the sense of fun on this movie is just, it's such a train. You're either going to get on it or not. And I feel like just the choice of getting on it, you get so much out of just letting the movie hit you with all of the interesting, and this is a beautifully directed film. That's another thing that I'm like, wow. So getting on the freight train for fun on this. I think there is something to what you said, Madeline. Having exposure to this when you're younger, the heightened sense of, oh God, like I have such low self-worth. Oh God, I'm feeling so
top of the world
on cloud nine. That's like being a teenager.
Absolutely.
And so there is something
like big swing from one emotion to another.
Exactly. And I think that's actually why this works so well in a high school setting in some weird way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does the deal with the devil thing, right? It is to a certain extent that part of it is a little on the nose because it is just like, hello, yes, I am a mysterious creature and I can give you whatever you want if you kill people. Like it's on the surface, there's not that much to it, but I do think that the way that all of these characters connect and the way that the story unfolds actually adds a lot of nuance to it. And I think that Rick Moranis plays this role beautifully. Yes, he wants to kind of claw his way up just out of the slums. Right. But so much of what he's doing for Audrey. And when
it's all for Audrey. Oh,
when
yeah.
he's,
really is,
like when he's justifying what he's doing, he's always kind of saying like, well, if I stop doing this, like I'm going to lose her.
She might not like me. She might not want me. Without my plant, she may not love me anymore is a lyric. And it's just like, without this other external thing, I'm nothing.
Yeah. Audrey II knows that that's the bargaining chip. And so Audrey II is also always reminding Seymour.
Yeah. I mean, watching it this time, I was very surprised by how resonant the Seymour character was to me. And I feel like it really cuts through a lot of the offbeatness. There is this story is pretty absurd, but Seymour really works.
Yeah.
To me, at least. And I'm open to hearing arguments to the contrary. Some of the things that jumped out to me are one of the things that you said. Rick Moranis, performance, kind of beautiful, really good. But there is also like a timelessness of how would you act in this situation? This movie does have a great setup for that. I think there is a lot of relatability in his character flaws. And we also brought up Deal with the Devil. This is basically the Faustian bargain.
Yeah.
That's such a time-honored narrative device as well. And I wanted to ask you all, what about Seymour is compelling to you?
Like Will and I were saying, everything he does for her. And I think there is something kind of tragically romantic about that in a way that, in the alternate ending that we'll talk about is truly tragic.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I can't wait to get into that.
Yeah. And I think, just down to little moments with the character, if there is one moment in the movie, I mean, I feel for Seymour a lot of the time, but if there's one moment where I'm just like, poor guy, it's when he realizes that he has to feed the plant with blood.
Yeah.
And starts pricking his fingers. And as you can see, this is definitely something I would not have picked up on at age 11, that like when he's like a little bit out of it because of the blood loss after that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Because before he goes to the lengths that he goes, he's sacrificing himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not lost on me either. Yeah.
Yeah, and it definitely wasn't lost on me watching it in 5th grade how like once things get to the point of him actually feeding entire people to the plant, that yes, he is satisfying this evil plant's desires, but the fact that he is not entirely his own fault.
And also, he does not kill
Right.
Orin Scrivello DDS.
Right.
You could argue that he perhaps could have saved him from death,
Yeah.
but you know,
I mean, the same thing happens with Mushnik, where it's like a little ambiguous. Like, could he have directed him away?
I think he's slightly more at fault with
Yes.
Mushnik.
I just thought of like, I never thought this comparison would come to my head, but I just thought of won't spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but like a pivotal scene in Breaking Bad where like some of the same questions
Sure.
come to mind. And also, you know, just like some like characters who start off as like the nerdy guy with glasses.
Yeah.
Like, do we think that there's a Heisenberg future in Krellborn's life?
I sure as hell hope not.
I hope not either.
Because he's a beautiful, pure, innocent cinnamon roll and must be protected. Unless you're in the alternate ending.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think names matter so much, right? And, you know, I think a name like Seymour Krellborn, that like it's someone who wants to see more. It also conveniently rhymes with things like be more, right? And the song,
Right.
you know, if you ask like, you know, what do we think of this guy Seymour and why do we love him? It's all inside of, I think, everyone's response to the song Suddenly Seymour, because we all
big
want
time.
to hear suddenly our name, that suddenly we can show up for somebody. We can suddenly step into our confidence. We can suddenly be brave. And that idea, that title, Suddenly Seymour, is brilliant. The alliteration is brilliant. Everything about it is just like beyond perfection in terms of songwriting and what it's doing for the characters in the show, but also what it's doing to our hearts and our minds. And also just his name, you know, what does it even mean to like Krellborn? It just sounds, he's like literally born of the like Krell. It just sounds like he's from filth. It's Suddenly Seymour that I think is why we see in Seymour what Audrey sees. You know, I think we all do. And I think they've done an incredible job of letting us into him vis-a-vis her, you know, and also I feel like we see Audrey the way he sees her. There's something really, really special about how they have brought the audience to those two characters through the eyes of the other. I think that's just really, really
not
beautiful.
Just that Seymour is like pining for her. Like she loves him too.
Right.
Absolutely.
She just has a lot of like guilt and self-hatred.
baggage.
She doesn't think she's worthy of him.
Exactly.
Right.
She says they both don't think they're worthy of love.
each other.
It's like two people that don't think they're worthy of being chosen and being seen. She loves him just as much as he loves her, but doesn't think, but she's, you know, she's from the gutter, you know?
Yeah.
She says, and so like he would never want a girl like me. You know,
and like she says, like
good.
I don't deserve somebody as good as him.
No.
She has that talk with the girls.
With the girls,
Yeah.
Yes.
And
It's
she's
so
like,
sweet.
I don't know. She's like, girl, you need to work on your self-worth.
Right before Somewhere That's Green. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's I mean, we just recently talked about The Apartment as well, and there's a little bit of that dynamic
I totally thought of The
with
Apartment.
Seymour, and then why am I forgetting her name now?
Audrey.
Audrey. Yeah, there are two of them.
Ellen Greene, actually, is her name. Also, by the way, can we just celebrate that she's the only person in the movie who was she was in the original 1982 production.
Sir.
She's been with I love that they honored her, that there's no one else in the world who could bring her into, you know, the public eye beyond the woman who originated. I mean, she is the role.
Yeah,
I mean,
and Frank Oz
it's really iconic.
says as much on the commentary.
Yeah,
He's like, you know, she knows this role way better than I ever could. Like I didn't have to work with her on this role because she was Audrey. Like she understands her so completely.
Yeah. I'm with you. You know, my question was directed more about Seymour, but really it's a story about two people that are actually way more alike than they know.
Or they
And-
appear on the
and
surface.
they appear, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they both are partnered terribly. You know, she has.
Oh, yeah.
They both are in abusive relationships. You know,
Exactly,
truly.
yes.
They are both in their own private hell. And when they both actually sort of like take off the mask and, you know, see each other and sing Suddenly Seymour, it's like now, and then they are instant in that moment, they make the plan to go, you know?
Yeah.
But they're trapped.
Yeah, there's more to come. I also love in Suddenly Seymour that crane shot to end it.
Incredible.
Come on,
Yeah.
man.
Iconic.
So good. So good.
Well, that's where like one of the things I found very consistently impressive about the movie is the cinematography.
Yeah.
And a lot of editing choices as well. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
on the aesthetic level, something came up earlier about how like, you know, we're very clearly on a soundstage from beat one of this movie. And but that to me, I think like this movie finds a nice balance between the kind of set design that you would expect from a soundstage, but also what you would expect to see on stage.
Yeah.
This famously took up a lot of space in the biggest soundstage in Western Europe.
Yeah.
But that there is an insularity to all of these sets as well. Like you can see how this would translate to a stage production.
And it also, I think, underlines the fact that these characters feel trapped because it feels very contained.
Sure.
Yeah. But about like Rick Moranis, I didn't get to listen to very much of the commentary on the DVD, but of what I did hear, Frank Oz was saying that as opposed to Ellen Greene being the originator of her character, that Rick Moranis, there was a little bit of taking it on faith and casting him in general.
Yeah, he said that, Frank Oz says that he didn't even know before casting Rick Moranis if Rick Moranis could sing.
Yeah.
Which is like crazy that you wouldn't check
Yeah.
that. I mean, he sounds great, but
He
I'm
does,
like,
yeah.
maybe make that part of the audition process.
I mean, that is just a testament to how well he got into the character. You're like, you must be able to sing.
Yeah.
If everything else is working this well. Yeah.
Well, Rick Moranis is just one of those actors that, like, I mean, you can typify people, but there's only one Rick Moranis.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's difficult to imagine, like, you know, you can cast other Seymours, but it's difficult to imagine anyone else having, like, that kind of sense, like, of portraying him that Rick Moranis has, you know, whether it be his relatively small height or the glasses or the hairdo. It's just, there's something about, like, lovable underdog that he really channels that no one else quite does it the same way.
Totally.
Yeah. He has very expressive eyes. I find
Definitely.
when he smiles, his eyes just get huge.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
When I was a kid, I actually thought he was still the same character from Ghostbusters. I didn't understand that like actors are different people in movies. I think because I just had, you know, there weren't just so many movies that really stuck with me. So I was like, oh yeah, no, it's the nerd from Ghostbusters, but now he's in this part of the town. You know, or like I actually didn't understand
New
Both New
York.
York. Both New York. Yeah.
Also in love with Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney.
Sigourney too. No.
Okay, I want to talk to you guys about the plant. So some of you may know this already. Frank Oz talks about it a lot on the commentary. So we have to talk about the way they filmed this plant because it's incredible, and it's actually a crime that this movie didn't win an Oscar for Best Editing.
It was up against Aliens, but that's more for a
Speaking of Sigourney Weaver, Sigourney 3.
I understand that, but I stand by my statement.
Sure.
Because of what I'm about to tell you if you're not aware. The thing with the plant, which is obviously, it's Frank Oz, so it's a puppet. There's no CGI here. It's
Love it.
entirely a practical puppet. When they're doing the puppetry, initially, they're like, we cannot move this plant fast enough to get it to sing at the speed it needs to. By accident, they find out that if they play the film faster, that it looks more realistic. And so anything with Audrey's movement is shot at 16 frames per second. Anything that just has Seymour or just has Audrey and doesn't have the plant in the background is shot at 24 frames per second.
Mm-hmm.
That means that in the 16 frames per second, when Rick Moranis, often it is him, occasionally it's Ellen Greene, when Rick Moranis is in the frame with Audrey II, that means that he has to sing everything at half speed, do his lines at half speed, and move in slow motion.
I forgot about this. Yes.
So because of this fact, and if you listen to the commentary, Frank Oz, it's almost annoying how much he's like, okay, this shot, 16 frames per second. This shot 24 frames per
I don't know. I love that energy.
It's fascinating, but it gets a little old.
All right, fair enough.
But because of that, I'm like, this movie is edited in an incredible way that like I've never seen anything else. Yes, the xenomorphs are incredible. I would argue that for effects, Aliens is maybe the way to go. But for editing, I've never seen something like this done. And the fact that Rick Moranis has to sing and deliver his lines and move at half speed.
Incredible.
For like most of the movie, he should have been nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah. I mean,
I
wonder how much of this was known publicly at the time.
Probably not that. Yeah. I can't imagine they were going around talking about this that much.
Yeah.
But when you look at the editing award for that year, so I mean, the movie wasn't even nominated, which, you know, it's one thing for it not to get the award. A crime.
I'm with you. This plant looks incredible.
Yeah.
Like it actually does. And I ride for practical effects.
Yeah.
All day, any day. I would rather it look like an 8th grade science fair project than CGI.
Yeah.
I really, really would. And I mean, this is so much better than 8th grade science fair project. There are like literally 50 people operating this thing. You know, one in one direction, one in
Brian
another.
Brian Henson behind the plant in like dressed in vines so that you can't see him moving. Everything's on wires. And it's like 50, 60 people with the largest plant.
Yeah, incredible stuff.
This is the beginning of what will be an inevitable thread of this episode cycle, because this is not going to be the last movie where we discuss some puppet stuff.
Yeah, you know, we haven't announced all our films, but we're getting at least 2 more puppet movies in this cycle.
Yeah, but that's, like watching the practical effects. Yeah, I mean, there really is no substitute for just how impressive those things are. I mean, during the final Audrey musical number, Audrey II, that is, where, you know, suddenly there are
multiple other little
ones.
Audrey's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, however many. There's reproduction going on. And like that, I think it's an impressive effect no matter what, but I feel like that's the scene of the movie where I just kind of like sit back in my chair at the effects.
And I think that's the moment that feels the most Muppety to me.
And when they build the 7th chord.
They're all harmonizing.
But also like really idiomatic of the time. Like that is such a trope. That's such a musical trope.
Twist and shout.
Put that on. To put that
Do
on.
You love me?
These little lettuce, these little
cabbage.
They're little like big lettuce. The little cabbages. Yes.
It's also the same year as Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which has a memorable twist and shout scene too.
I love all this.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we shift over to Comparison Corner? Does anybody want to start?
I can immediately think of a comparison between Little Shop of Horrors and a movie that I have very copiously praised on this podcast before, which is a movie that comes a few years later. I don't think Little Shop of Horrors was necessarily on the mind of the filmmakers making this. I could be wrong, but the film is Delicatessen.
Ooh.
Yes.
Okay.
The French film from 1991, the directorial debut of Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who we discussed recently when we watched Amélie for the podcast, the last Viewnanimous, by the way. It's a co-directorial effort of him and Marc Caro. This is another movie that is set within a small milieu. It's, you know, pretty much just, it's one building, let's say, and a few settings, I believe a few settings around that, if I remember correctly. It's a movie that also has this combination of some very like sweet, sincere elements with a true darkness. It's not an adaptation of a play. It's an original story, but there are some truly eye-catching practical effects in the film too. A lot goes on in it. There is no mutant plant in it. I don't think that's ruining anything about that movie though, but coming from what, you know, by all appearances to me looks like a very different set of influences. In fact, I was, you know, doing a little bit of scanning on the Little Shop Wikipedia page I saw some mention of Terry Gilliam's Brazil, which comes the year before and is another very impressive practical effect movie. And that definitely was an influence on Delicatessen. So I can't help but see that in a little bit of dialogue with Little Shop of Horrors.
I love this. Very cool.
Thanks.
I still got to see this movie.
Yeah, highly recommend. Very again.
Cool. I'm going to jump in with this one. So when I was watching Little Shop, I had this image going through my head, and it was like a line of dialogue or something where someone was like getting what they wanted, but they realized that they were very unhappy and they were guilty. And I was like, what is this? Where is this? I don't know why it's not clicking for me. And then I realized that it's Heathers.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
which is crazy for me because I love that movie. It has lived rent free in my head since I was a teenager.
Also became a musical, an off-Broadway musical.
Don't think I wasn't about to say that. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, I pulled it.
No, I'm glad you were the one to bring it up. Listeners, if you want to listen to me wax poetic about what Heathers was for me, we have an episode about that back in our archives. But yeah, Heathers, it's the like careful what you wish for, getting what you want, but at what cost to yourself and others. It's another one of those. I do see some parallels between Veronica and Seymour. JD is kind of like that Audrey II. There's like this kind of energy there where it's like running, roughshod over this person's life. And it's just like, oh my God, what have I let myself do? Because I want something better. I think what Heathers is to high school movies, Little Shop, is to like straight musicals. It's like, it's the offbeat one. It's the one that uses the conventions of that genre, but isn't afraid to warp them to try to come up with something fresh. And as you said, Will, it was also a movie first that then about 25 years after it was a film became a successful musical as well, the way Little Shop was. And the other last thing I want to say is that like Little Shop, and we're going to get into this, there was an original ending to Heathers that was much darker and
That's
bleaker.
true.
And it was rewritten to be more optimistic. And as a result, I think we're left with a character that represents some hope. And I know that we probably have some love for the original ending, and I think some of it will come from me. But I don't think that the theatrical ending is bad. I think there's something nice about it in the way that I think Heathers also has something very meaningful.
Yeah.
So that's my pick.
Cool. I don't have like a big comparison, but I just wanted to use this opportunity to talk about the fact that this is a movie that has a lot of intersection with like sketch comedy. I guess not sketch specifically, but just like there are some people in this movie that come from sketch and just like a lot of people that come from comedy more broadly.
Sure.
But the fact that you have like Steve Martin, Rick Moranis, obviously.
SCTV, yeah.
And then you have a lot of people coming in smaller roles like Bill Murray, like John Candy.
Oh, yeah, John
like
Candy.
Christopher Guest, who is unrecognizable to me in this movie. Like I generally feel like I have a good eye to spot Christopher Guest. Did not realize it was him until I got to the credits, as many times as I've seen this movie.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really interesting about that because I think it adds to the offbeatness of this adaptation. Because if you were to make an adaptation like this now, not of this specifically, but like, oh, what if we
round it up like the best in that field.
Best in like SNL or something, and like throw in like Kate McKinnon and Bowen Yang and all these others to a movie musical adaptation, not Wicked, but like a different, a more like a scrappier I feel like it would be a phenomenon. Potentially. I think it's like a really interesting choice.
Yeah,
that
agreed.
they go with.
Also, Jim Belushi.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, that was something from the first viewing years and years ago. Mostly didn't stick with me. The fact that I missed Bill Murray, that one escaped. That's a little more vexing to me. How did I miss him? I had seen Ghostbusters at that age, but yeah, Christopher Guest. There's something about him when he's not like specifically costumed. He is like kind of an everyman in a weird way.
I'm like, you put a hat on Christopher Guest, and I'm like, I don't know who that man is.
Yeah, but it's
the
also,
radar's gone.
Yeah.
Like we recently watched A Few Good Men as well, and I found him similar in that movie where it's like it took me a second to be like, wait, that's Christopher Guest.
See, that's one that I was like, that's Christopher Guest, and Dougie was like, wait, really?
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, oh, I'm good at this.
I must be abysmal because I didn't even know until you brought it up now that Christopher Guest was in A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
There we go.
One of the people who speaks
he's
on the
stand.
Yeah.
I
think he's a
like
doctor.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm placing him now. All right,
yeah,
cool,
he has these weird glasses too.
Cool.
But and it's also remarkable that like I'm sure there are other cases where Steve Martin performs music, but that you get him in a musical number and he doesn't have his banjo.
True.
Yeah.
Well, King Tut.
Yeah, that too.
he kind of broke on the scene in kind of what kind of reminds me of, like, I remember when I saw King Tut, I'm like, oh, it's the dentist. Like, he's doing the dentist.
Yes.
Like, there was something about the swagger and the sort of like Elvis of it all that sort of somehow connected to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love
And
that.
Will, you were asking up top, like, oh, I'm curious as to how much of Bill Murray's scene was improvised. And Frank says on the commentary, Frank Oz says, like, all of it. He pretty much
Amazing.
just let him cook. And they did, it seemed like it was entirely improvised. And so Steve Martin also didn't know what he was going to be doing. And so he had to play off of him. So it really is just like the kind of the two of them riffing. And they weren't sure how they were going to end it. If you'll remember the ending that you get, he kicks him out, and then Steve Martin's dentist finds that Bill Murray has like tried to steal one of his tools. He's like in the jacket.
Right.
That was not scripted, and so that was just like, what if we tried this? Apparently, they did 32 different potential endings to this scene, and that's the one that stuck, which I love. I think it's hilarious.
That's phenomenal.
I would watch all 32
Yeah.
of these. If
Yeah.
they released
Absolutely.
them.
Just
Are you
run them
kidding
back
me?
to back. Yeah, let's do
Yes.
it.
For sure. So in this comparison segment, if we can do a comparison of something on the micro about how Somewhere That's Green is the prototype for Part of Your World.
Let's
which,
go.
3 years later, as they get introduced to Disney and the first new world of Disney musicals, they absolutely had a conversation that had to go. We nailed it with Audrey, and we know how to make this kind of a moment work. We've seen it night after night after night. This could be huge. Let's not mess it up, And I think they just knew they had lightning in a bottle in terms of structure and songcraft. Like not even like, I mean, there's so many things, but first of all, they scanned the same. Somewhere That's Green, Part of Your
Of their
World.
world.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then at the end, you have Out of the Sea, Wish I Could Be
Yes.
Part of Your World, Far
Yeah.
from Skid Row, Someday I'll Go,
know. Yep.
Somewhere That's Green. Even melodically, if you take
Yes.
the first note out of their hooks, you go, Where That's Green,
Yeah.
of Your World, and you
Yeah.
go, Part of Your World, Somewhere That's Green. I mean, the song structure is identical in terms of how the song sections function. I just think there's something so beautiful about writers who kind of understood the assignment and knew that they had done something once, but it was in a different context for a different, like, I think they sort of got like, I think we're kind of safe to repeat this because this is for kids and that was for adults. Like, I think they kind of were like, I think we're good to just
We
sorta-
can run this
Totally.
back.
And
Yep.
thematically, they're very similar. Like it's
Absolutely.
in both contexts. It's a character
It's a wish, it's a want.
fantasizing about, it's greener on the other side.
The 12-inch screen.
Exactly.
And they're list songs, right? It's like
Yes.
the
Yeah.
list, flipping your fins. You don't do this. Legs,
Yep.
like all, they both are
Mhm.
listing the things.
What's the word? Burn. Yeah.
Yeah.
In my prep to talk Little Mermaid, I came across a clip where Howard Ashman literally says, he's like, it could be the third song, it could be the fourth song, but if you look at Broadway musical tradition, somewhere in the first 20 to 25 minutes of a show, there's a moment where a female character just sits on a bench and tells you what they want. And you said it up top, Will. It's the want song.
Yeah,
And,
want song, yeah.
and after this song, the audience wants this person to get the thing that
Yeah.
they want.
What's interesting about this show, though, is that Seymour is ultimately the protagonist, but I love that they gave her an I Want song as well, which also really helps inform the audience that she is extremely important, that her wants are, typically, you really, like, there isn't a Glinda I Want song. There's only an Elphaba I Want song.
Yeah,
Elphaba
Glinda
sings-
gets everything she wants anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
Yeah.
but that tells the audience you're tracking really ultimately Elphaba's journey of
Yeah.
discovery and
I love
transformation
that.
because
Yeah.
she sings "The Wizard and I." That is her "I Want" song, right? So it's
Right.
interesting construction here in Little Shop of Horrors where we meet Seymour and he sings "Grow for Me." All he
Yeah.
wants is this plant to grow so he can impress Audrey. But then they give her a true "I Want" song. I forget exactly where it is in the show, but whereas Part of Your World does happen in that like slot. That is the I Want slot. And Prince Eric doesn't sing. Although actually there is a I Want song. When they took Little Mermaid and put it on Broadway, they added songs. And actually Prince Eric does get a song called Her Voice that is sort of his I Want song. So that they sort of
Interesting.
did an inverse there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You all should go and on YouTube, there is a clip from Alan Menken at a concert at 54 Below in New York City where he does a medley of all of the cut songs. There are so many cut songs from the musical as they were trying to find its legs and figure out its sound, where the whole Motown of it all wasn't even part of it. It was very like musical theater show tune. And then I think it was Howard Ashman when they really thought like, no, this is what he said was it's a beach blanket horror movie. And we want to lean into the 60s with the dark side of Grease. And then they're like, we got it. And then that's when the actual sound clicked in. But you should go and just, some of those cut songs are hysterical. And so like you can just so see the DNA coming out of like where it would go. And also just shows like writers who are unwilling to stop until they get it right, which I just love. Like they didn't write just like one version of the thing. They wrote like 5 and then they chose it's this, So I as a writer, I just really adore that.
Nice.
That's awesome. Thank you, Will, for that. That's great.
Very, very briefly going back to the point about 2 I Want songs, it just makes me think of like how, I mean, it's not a musical, but in Goodfellas, you get narration from both Henry and Karen Hill. And then like, it's, it's an anti-hero story. I don't really know if you're rooting for either one of them, but you're invested in their stories in a similar way.
That's true.
Maybe that's as much similarity as you get between Little Shop of Horrors and Goodfellas, but there you have it.
Go there. I'm so glad we're there.
And speaking of being invested in these character stories, the investment that audiences have in Audrey and Seymour causes them to react very poorly to the original ending.
Let's get into this. Yeah.
All right. So the theatrical cut of this film famously diverts from the ending of the stage show, opting for a more optimistic conclusion. And Frank Oz and Howard Ashman originally wanted to keep the stage show's ending, in which Audrey and Seymour both die, and we witness Audrey II rampaging through cities across the world, Cleveland and Des Moines and New York,
and where you live,
and where you live.
But also and Peoria, which is just
Peoria,
the best ever. That best dotted rhythm ever. And Peoria.
Presumably leading to world domination. The finale was produced in full, supposedly for a hefty sum of $5 million.
I mean, you see it. Yeah. There's a lot on the screen there. Yeah.
Utilizing miniatures to create the effect of the rampage, including Audrey II climbing the Statue of Liberty. However, as I said, this ending tested incredibly poorly, like 17% or something in their test screenings. I think you have to hit over 50 to even be considered for release.
Wow. Okay.
So that led to a rewrite, reshoots, and the theatrical ending that we've come to know. So I'm initially just curious as to how each of you feel about these 2 endings. But I also am curious as to how you think these 2 endings affect the overall tone of the film. Is it different if the ending is different?
Can I jump real quick? I'll be quick.
Get in there.
What I'll say is the reason why it works on stage is that we are not nearly as close up to these to the world, and we're not in. I know we've talked about realism here and that it is a cartoon. However, we are still on film, and we can get into both Ellen Greene's and Rick Moranis' incredible, large, beautiful eyes, and we are, unlike, on a stage show, like we're in the dentist office and we're really in a world. And so we're invested in characters in a way that is very different than when we are really zoomed out and we have the frame of a theater where we really understand we're watching a story rather than being really in it and really kind of like feel like I have this different kind of connection that we have with our leading characters when we're on screen and then off. And then I also think on stage, we sort of understand that we're sort of in a world of the damned. Yeah. Everyone in this world is damned, and that this world is not fit for beauty. I think beauty cannot survive, and there's no goodness really in this world. And this is sort of the moment where goodness, the last like breath of goodness, is snuffed out because the world actually isn't worthy of it. And there's something about that on stage when you see Seymour and Audrey become part of the plant. You sort of understand that like we're all part of the plant, and we're all part of, because the way they do it is they get into this amazing costume where they are part of the plant, which would not track on camera. Like the way they costume him in the musical would be so silly. And so I get why the audiences were like, I fell in love with Seymour and Audrey.
And
I love
Rick
them.
Moranis.
I care about them in a way that's different than when you are steps away in a big house. So that's why I absolutely understand why those audiences said no.
And I think it was Frank Oz that said like, oh, well, when you go see this on stage, after they die, they come back out for curtain call,
Right.
and they're
Absolutely.
fine.
Mhm,
And you
good
don't get
point.
that on screen.
Yeah. And to me, like watching both of the endings, they both have interesting qualities. I can understand why one was used and one was not. I don't think either of them is the perfect ending of the story to me. I think the perfect ending would be a mix of the two.
Mhm.
In that, so I mean, the ending as we see it in the movie is that Audrey II gets defeated,
Electrocuted to death.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
explodes like the Death Star. Um,
Yeah, like the pot disappears. I
Yeah.
love that. It's just
as far as we know, Audrey won, and Seymour become a couple and live what looks like it'll be happily ever after, except that there's a little Audrey in one of their flower pots.
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, like the fact that they went that way, it makes sense. There are a lot of movies that go that way, but it does feel a little too neat and immediate
Yeah.
for this kind of story. It makes me think of a quote I often mention from Todd Haynes referencing Douglas Sirk movies, the obligatory heterosexual ending. It does feel a bit like that Sirkian ending there.
Yeah.
But watching the alternate ending and knowing that the death of the characters tested poorly, I think I kind of see why it did. It felt a little bit tonally disconnected from the rest of the movie, and the fact that you've had to invest in them this whole time. I'm not against there being bleak endings to stories if it's what fits, but I felt like it just kind of didn't fit here. And then I was certainly impressed by like the scale of the effects. I did think that was a strong point, but then the way that it just kind of ends with Audrey climbing the Statue of Liberty and then
Yeah.
being shot at by the National Guard. There was something that I felt like, just wasn't quite as fulfilling
And
about
then
that too.
breaks through the screen.
To
Yeah.
keep the audience.
Yeah,
Iconic.
which is
Yes.
apparently from what I was reading, a bit of a callback to how it's done on stage.
That is absolutely right. Yes, where the plant, it literally comes out at the audience. It
Yeah.
actually isn't the original stage ending, because the stage ending is all of the main characters in and of the plant singing "Don't Feed the Plants." Whereas in the film, we have no connection to Seymour, Audrey, Mushnick, all the people we've been tracking all night. We're just watching literally random like extras deal with this, rather than
Right.
I wonder what a third ending would have been, where they actually tried to have our leading characters give the final message. But I don't know. I think does it jump the shark in a way that it's not actually the same storytelling language as what they're doing in that film. So it just would feel very alien. But I do feel like
Yeah.
it's very incomplete.
The way you just described it as storytelling language to me is 100% it. Like if you
Yeah.
see that in the movie and, they have these characters sort of as like apparitions or
I don't even kind of describe it. They're almost in like furry, like I don't know, like pajama. They're in like pajamas, kind of weirdly. Like it's very like comical, and
Yeah.
we're still with them in a way. And
Yeah,
they're warning the audience. They are telling the audience like, don't go for the easy fix,
Yeah.
people. It's really giving the like, this is the moral of the story. Whereas in this new ending, it's just like everything blows up, and so we don't
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
that final message from the people we've been tracking all night.
Yeah. I think that it works really well that we have followed these people that are just such hangdog characters. You want something good for them.
Yeah,
It reminds me also a bit of the film True Romance. It's a really interesting movie if you are a Tarantino fan, because it is not a Tarantino directed film, but all of the dialogue is Tarantino. But in that script, he has the main character getting killed off. And Tony Scott, as he was reading it, was like, I don't know. I don't know about this ending. Like, I just feel like I've grown to love these people. And as he was in the process of filming the movie, he ended up going to Tarantino, had a conversation with him, and he's like, I want these people to live. I think the audience is going to want these people to live. And he had to talk Tarantino into it. I think it's a stronger movie, True Romance, because it actually gives the people what they want. And I feel like Little Shop too, like, I don't think that this movie would have endured. The movie would have endured if it has the bleak ending. And I will say this too. I actually love that little touch that the aliens are still there.
Yeah.
To me,
Sure. Yeah.
that gives you just enough of the cynicism, enough of the like, guys, this story is not over.
You
And
couldn't do that on stage. You couldn't do that ending on stage.
That's
exactly,
true.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so to me, I I kind of think they did it. They nailed it. But I love a dark, bleak, just the world is burning ending.
I agree. And so I love the alternate ending so much, and I think it's superior in almost every way. I understand the argument that I don't think the film would have been the hit that it was, although I will argue that it wasn't as much of a financial hit at the time as they were hoping, because it was a very expensive movie. So it kind of underperformed, but maybe it wouldn't have had the staying power they ended up having had it stuck with the original ending. I do think that is a good point.
I think they felt brave to make that choice, in 1982. Also, my birth year, so I think it's also why I love this movie, or this musical.
Yeah.
But Sweeney Todd, as a Stephen Sondheim musical, a very bleak ending where both of our anti-heroes, everyone dies,
They're
Sweeney
not
dies
as lovable.
Mrs. Lovett dies as well. And there's also so much actual practical blood on stage in the original especially in the original Broadway production. And in the original off-Broadway production of Little Shop, there is zero blood. There's no buckets of blood. We see the blood in our imagination, but I think they felt emboldened by, everybody dies in Sweeney Todd, and we followed them all night, and maybe we can do that here. So I wonder if they sort of felt like there was some permission there to go there. Yeah,
I love that. I definitely thought a lot of Sweeney Todd with Little Shop.
It's a good, interesting connection. To me, the perfect ending of Little Shop, the movie, maybe not the stage show, would be Seymour and Audrey I don't die, but that Audrey II maybe breaks out of the shop and wreaks some havoc in New York City, but to the point that maybe it's, climbing the Empire State Building or something, but they find a way to stop Audrey II. So it's a little more Ghostbusters-y. Maybe they just didn't want to replicate Ghostbusters.
I thought a lot about Ghostbusters.
Get the Marshmallow Man. Get the
Yeah.
Marshmallow Man versus Audrey II. I'm there for it.
That's
it's like
the perfect
Godzilla
ending.
versus Mecha Godzilla.
Yes.
Wait, my
Epic
childhood,
rap battles
I would
of
lose.
history.
I would lose my mind.
I love that. That's so good.
Yeah. So to have that kind of ending where there's still like an earned happiness at the end, but you do get some of the popcorn thrills of seeing Audrey II wreak a little more havoc. And maybe it's like, maybe you see them in like the white picket fence house, or maybe there's just maybe a little like the ending of Speed where the two characters finally come together. And it's maybe you don't really see what happens, but you get like a kind of a promise to one another, a suggestion of what's going to come.
Yeah.
That to me would be the perfect ending for Little Shop, the movie.
Do we want to take this moment to shout out a couple of notable moments, fun details, things that we love about this?
I think there are really great small visual moments in this. I like in the dentist song the like inside the mouth vision.
Oh yeah.
With the tongue, which is also Steve Martin's like card at the end in the end credits.
Yes.
Supposedly like the drill he had to have there for forced perspective was like 2 feet long.
I love that. That to me brought big like Audrey II vibes. You're like
totally.
the same puppeteers are all putting that together.
And you get a few moments like that, like when Seymour is carrying around the little tiny Audrey II initially into the shop. You get like a shot of you get Audrey II vision, like you're looking up at Seymour.
Right.
And I really like those little moments in this movie.
POV shots, yeah.
Totally.
I also love the very end of the dentist song.
Yeah.
I love the match cut of him spitting out the water
Now
and then
spit.
Exactly. And then the bottle ending up in the puddle outside on Skid Row.
Yeah.
Really there were a couple of them that were really fun. The great match cuts there.
It matches the beginning of the movie too.
Exactly.
The thing I love about the bottle at the beginning is that you don't know when you're seeing the crawl, you don't realize that you're just looking at a puddle.
At a puddle. That's right.
But it is the puddle the whole time. It's not like the bottle breaks that reality or or makes you enter the reality. But if you rewatch it, you can see from the as soon as the crawl starts that it is just the puddle, but you don't notice until you see the bottle that breaks that immersion.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Sometimes in a movie with very exuberant colors throughout, I become interested in the moments of blandness, of intentional blandness. And to me, like, especially in contrast to the flower at the center of this story, that seeing some of the flowers in pots by Seymour's bed on the shelves there, I liked that just as a detail to like to establish the bland side of this film's color scheme, where you see there are other very modest plants in like coffee pots. Established before that this movie is cartoonish. Realism is not one of its goals, but that was a little moment that to me felt truly realistic.
I also like that establishes Seymour as like a plant nerd.
Yeah.
And so when you
right.
get lines like when he and Audrey are talking about getting married and running off together and he's like, no plants at all. Like that's tragic because this has been like a love and a hobby of his.
Right.
Yeah.
And this experience has ruined plants for him.
Yeah.
Sadly.
And just the metaphor of like what a plant is and the just the want for something to grow. And there's just something so beautiful about just like a person, you know, just the simplicity of just like life and care and nurture and how like, you know, like the whole expression of like, you know, you grow where you're planted, you know, and that like Seymour can't grow where he's planted because he's just of his circumstance and his upbringing as an orphan, and
he does not have good soil.
Yeah, and he just wants to grow something that is pure and good and will thrive. For me, it's the okay. Am I wrong? There is an animated bird.
And
Somewhere That's Green.
I actually, for a second, I was like, wait, am I just imagining this?
Was that a puppet? There's a lot of puppets.
Somewhere That's Green blew my mind when I was a kid because it felt like it was its own. It felt like it was a music video. It felt like a mini movie inside of the movie.
Yeah.
And that whole world and the choreography of that and that set, everything about it is perfection. And then that animated bird just like takes it over to the top. So that to me is
very Cinderella.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
That animated bird sequence, I don't remember a lot about like the classroom experience of seeing this movie in 5th grade, but if memory serves me correctly, I think there was a big laugh when the animated bird came in.
Yeah. And there's a really good cut in Somewhere That's Green where she's like twirling.
Oh, I love it. The dress.
You get the zoom in of her twirling. You're zoom in on her skirt, and then it's a different skirt, and it zooms out.
I love it.
That's also like West Side Story. That's a shot in West Side Story, I believe, or it feels reminiscent.
It feels
of
like
that
it should be
when they're
if it's
spinning
not.
where she spins in the bridal shop with the dress, and then it goes to the dance at the gym.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like related to me at least. Yeah.
No, that's so cool. There's one line delivery that kills me in this is when Seymour asks her. He says, you know, that she chases him down. He's run out of the shop and run away from the news guys. You know, he finds out, you know, that he's going to get some money and, oh, this is what he needs. And he's like, well, this is what we need to get away. And he goes, will you marry me, Audrey? And then she looks at him and she goes, oh, Seymour, this is so sudden. And I don't know what it is about that moment that cracks me up. It's realistic, but it's also, it feels so much like her character to be like, I wasn't expecting this. Oh my God. Like, how am I supposed to respond? I just think it's fantastic and it kills me every time.
Another small Ellen
suddenly
Green.
Seymour.
Suddenly Seymour. Another small Ellen Green moment. I like when she slaps him because it's like the most delicate.
Oh, yes.
She's like, Seymour, you're hysterical.
Well, this is just a year before Moonstruck that also features Vincent Gardenia, and when you have, that evolves snap out of it. And that.
That's very true.
Just in knowing that detail, I can't not think of them. Yeah. And another intertextual little detail that I thought of. So, I mean, and yet again, a line from this movie that stuck with me from the first viewing is that after Oren, I mean, we know that Oren is dead, but, to Audrey, he's disappeared. And the detectives speak with her and she tells Seymour they suspect foul play. And I think most of us, when we think of more recent pop culture, would, think of that line coming up in Knives Out of Benoit Blanc going, I suspect foul play, which is a movie that features a cameo from Frank Oz.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
One scene role. I think that had more to do with Rian Johnson knowing him from making Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. But still, I wonder if there was any intentionality in, that line coming up there too.
I have one more. So the stuff with the plant, we've talked about how impressive it is. A lot of it is shot 10 seconds at a time, which is it's insane.
Yeah.
The scene with Audrey II that took the most takes is when it's alone in the shop and it's about to call Audrey.
It drags
itself forward to the phone and reaches around the cash register and opens it
or whatever,
and gets a dime and puts it
Inflation,
in the
yeah.
phone.
But
Yeah,
first,
exactly.
wait. But then
Yeah.
it checks the payphone to see if there's anything
Also
in the little like
I
payphone
love
thing. That's
that.
such a cute
Such
I
a
detail.
love
good
that.
detail.
That was
I'm
not
like,
lost
how do you
on
even
me.
know about this plant? How do you even know about how these things
You've
work?
been
It's so
witnessing a lot of
savvy.
people use that payphone.
Right? Yeah. It's like, oh wow. And just the fact that is all puppetry and
It's all puppetry, and
Yeah,
it's incredible because that took 73 takes. Him picking the dime and putting it into the phone.
Well, Will,
Frank
you
Oz said most takes he's ever done in a movie.
amazing. Well, Will, you talked about Howard Ashman doing 5, 6, 7 takes to get it right. Heaping more praise on that mentality. Do it until we get it on camera.
I mean, do or do not. There is no try.
Oh man, I wanted to mention another line reading that just totally hit me, which is the introduction that we have to Audrey and Seymour when Seymour stumbles in and just drops, a whole plate of pots or whatever like that. Audrey's helping him pick up everything, and they have their little exchange. And he asks her, he says, "Is that new eye makeup?" To me, that is like their relationship in a nutshell. That we've already heard Mushnick be like, "Where'd you get that shiner? You got a shitty boyfriend. You got to dump this guy." And he doesn't even have it in his mind that it could have been something against her will.
Yeah.
We see why Audrey is so drawn to this guy, because all he does is see the best in anything that involves her. And she is not living that. But through him, she can get a taste of it. I just love that moment.
Yeah.
Also, now I'm just thinking, I don't know why this maybe. Oh, because you said her, and then when Steve Martin dies, or Oren dies, I think his last line is, "It's what you did. It's not what you did to me. It's what you did to her." And he says, "Her who?" He doesn't even think. He doesn't even know that you're thinking. And then he goes, "Oh, her." But then while he's doing that, those like weird little baby balloons are like expanding. That is like so, and the sound of that mask is like really etched in my brain. But the fact that he doesn't even know who he's talking about, and his last gasp is like he didn't even realize that he was even hurting someone, or that someone that mattered, or that somebody even noticed.
Right.
Somebody else noticed.
Lived as a narcissist and dies like one too.
Yes.
I just want to ask one last question, or just kind of pose it to the group here. One of the things that always makes me laugh, and I know, this is an absurd premise. There's some tongue-in-cheek details about this, but the way that the whole world just accepts that this plant is called Audrey II. That there's like no botanist that shows up and is like, "Hold on a minute, like we need to classify this." It's just like, this is Audrey II. All the money people are like, "We're going to sell a bunch of Audrey IIs and da 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 da." And it's like,
people that discover the things get to name it. That's the rule.
Okay, yeah. I love that.
I always took that for granted. That's so funny.
Yeah, I just think that that's hilarious, and also,
and nobody's like, "Who's Audrey 1?"
Right.
Even there we go. I just think it plays into a little bit of the dream logic that I think just works for this story.
Can I say that when I was a kid, I had a hamster named Hamlet, which is the best name for a hamster. And then Hamlet died, and so I got a second hamster, and I named it Hamlet 2.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hamlet 2 was not as nice.
Oh, wow. I assume no connection to the movie of the same name.
No.
Which is a great movie, by the way.
Not familiar
Oh my
with
gosh,
that movie when I was 9 naming my hamster.
Oh yeah, that wouldn't have existed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
I
good-
didn't. I didn't realize you were that young.
That's
I was hamster age.
there
Yeah.
we go.
All right, are we ready for some unlikely shared universe time?
Absolutely. I'm excited to get into this.
Sweet. And I mean, talking about shared universes in a universe where there already are aliens, I mean, I think that's, pretty juicy.
Yeah.
What we're getting into
definitely.
here. I'd like to convey a scenario for a character who we haven't discussed very much. So that character is Crystal.
Me. Wait, no, not me. Continue.
Yes. Who we only know as, in more theatrical terms, a backup singer, but really just kind of a character coexisting in
Greek
the
chorus.
Greek chorus.
yes, a Greek chorus member in the milieu surrounding.
Put some respect on their title. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so Crystal is a member of the Greek chorus surrounding Mushnick's flower shop, experiencing some of its happenings up close and others from afar. Beyond what we see of her, though, Crystal in this, time in the early 1960s is in the early stages of a relationship with her husband-to-be, who's named Julius, as they try to find their way in the Brooklyn neighborhood of Bedford-Stuyvesant, Bed-Stuy colloquially. And as years go by, Crystal, who's been going by her middle name, decides she'd rather go by her given first name, Rochelle, as she enters married life and the prospect of child rearing comes closer to being a reality. Within a few years, as the 1960s go along, it is a reality, and Rochelle is the mother of 3 children who are named Chris, Drew, and Tanya, all living together in tight quarters, and their whole family is stressed on multiple fronts, and, there's a pretty hectic life that they're living, this family of 5. So Rochelle holds things down on the home front while Julius, that's her husband, and the father to her children, supports the family, working 2 jobs at a time. And as the 1970s give way to the 1980s, the dynamics of this family really solidify. When Rochelle's not looking after her family, she indulges in pleasures such as a habit of copiously eating chocolate turtles. And when times get very hard, her first idea of a solution is often a dose of Robitussin. As for the greater family unit, Rochelle will be the first to remind you that her husband Julius is always working 2 jobs, while their youngest child, Tanya, proves to be wise beyond her years, sometimes letting it get to her head. The middle child, Drew, coasts on good looks and athletic skills, and the eldest, Chris, always seems to bear the brunt of any inconvenience that surrounds him, to the point of being convinced that everybody hates him.
Oh,
there we go.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right.
Yeah. Did anybody else here ever watch Everybody Hates Chris?
I've seen a few episodes,
I
not
have
in a
too.
long time.
But
Yes.
it's been a long time for me as well.
But the actor here is Tachina Arnold, who plays Crystal in Little Shop of Horrors. This was very early in her career. I think she was like 20 or something when they
I
made
think
this movie.
all 3 of them are under 20. I think
wow.
they're 18 and 19
Wow.
in this.
Wow. But then, yes,
Good for
she's
them. They're so fun.
Yeah.
later
Yeah.
very memorably cast as Chris Rock's mother when Everybody Hates Chris comes to fruition in the mid-2000s.
Wow.
That's a really, really great show. Some of that stuff, I mean, talking about nostalgia, it's, made in the 2000s, set in the 1980s. And even then, I didn't have to live through the 1980s to appreciate a lot of what it was showing. It's another great fake New York, too. It's clearly made on sound stages in LA, but who cares? It's a really well-written show. Chris Rock is the narrator. Check out Everybody Hates Chris. Evergreen 20 years later.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
great. I don't mind going next.
Go for it.
Go
Cool.
for it.
I'm doing this slightly off the dome here, so I'm going to see how this goes. When we last see Audrey, she and Seymour are set up to live the life that they've always wanted, together, somewhere that's green, in a suburban setting, and all will be right with the rest of their lives, right? Well, there is that alien plant in the front lawn that suggests differently. I think that surviving alien plant comes back to haunt them and it ruins this idyllic life that Seymour and Audrey have worked so hard to create. I know, bummer for those who love the theatrical ending and the optimism that it has. Sorry. But yes, things fall apart and Audrey licks her wounds. She returns back to New York, not to Skid Row though. And I'm going to say this too. In a past unlikely shared universe, we talked about the fact that maybe there are some anti-aging regenerative properties to having close encounters with Audrey II.
Yeah.
And I believe that Audrey I was able to get some of that from her brief time in the mouth of Audrey II.
Seems
So-
plausible.
Yeah, so Audrey I does not age very much in 30 years or so. The self-worth stuff she's still kind of working on. And so she finds herself, unfortunately, not with the nicest of guys. She ends up shacking up with this gentleman who I'm going to refer to as Mr. Lando, a small-time drug dealer, good enough for low self-esteem Audrey, who now, in order to shed some aspects of her past life, she goes by the name Margie. Margie and Mr. Lando start a family. They end up having 3 kids. things are not going super great for them. The three kids just basically run the house while dad is trying to stay one step ahead of loan sharks. But unfortunately, it's not loan sharks that end up after him. It's a crooked cop. And when this crooked cop and his crew show up, they blow that apartment to bits. They end up actually killing everybody there. So this is the end of Audrey I. But I'll tell you what, she has a daughter named Matilda. Now that she doesn't have her blood family to stay with, Matilda ends up staying with the hitman who's living next door and vows to take revenge on this crooked cop that killed her family. A lot of things ensue, but Matilda ends up in the possession of a plant. And she decides to take this plant and actually put it into the ground and start some roots. Something energetically is going on there. That there's a little bit of Audrey's past that is still able to exist through the actions of Matilda.
Okay. Like that you're bringing the plants, the botanical back in.
Thank you. Does anybody know this film?
I definitely do not.
No.
I don't think I do.
This is another film that I have used for Unlikely Shared Universe. This is Leon the Professional.
Oh.
Yes.
Because Ellen Greene plays Matilda's mother.
Okay.
Matilda is the
Oh.
Natalie Portman character.
Okay. Got it.
I knew that was vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it.
Yeah, I really am not super familiar with her filmography outside of this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Same.
I was really tempted to find an Unlikely Shared Universe connection with her and a character where she plays like a guidance counselor teacher. And another film that I love, I've talked about Heathers before, another Christian Slater-led film, Pump Up the Volume, which I love. But I really like this one, especially because of the botanical ending
Totally.
that both of these films have.
All right. So mine was Dougie's suggestion. I wrote it. Julian will get it. Emilio will not because you haven't seen this thing. And Will find out. So Patrick Martin is a character that appears in both endings. In the theatrical ending, he is played by Jim Belushi. Patrick appears to Seymour and Audrey in the alley and says, "If you two kids can just stop singing for one moment."
I do love that line.
good.
Great line. He has a pitch for them. His company would like to take cuttings from Audrey II and sell the saplings around the world. And in the theatrical ending, it appears as though Seymour turns his offer down. But the tiny Audrey II outside of his and Audrey I's idealistic suburban home suggests otherwise.
In
In the alternate ending, the Patrick Martin played by Paul Dooley admits that his company has already taken cuttings from Audrey II. So let's say that Belushi's Patrick Martin has done the same and attempts to breed small Audrey IIs to sell around the world. The thing is, propagation is a fickle thing. It's actually quite complicated. So the saplings have the look of Audrey II and make Patrick Martin a boatload of money, but they aren't sentient and luckily aren't connected to the antagonistic Audrey II of this film. So Patrick makes a lot of money, but the controversy of the less than spectacular product his company was selling causes the worldwide botanical enterprises to go under. Patrick uses his money to start a casino empire in Las Vegas, and he eventually decides, thank you, that he needs to give back, and he takes in two young orphans, one of which bears a striking resemblance to him. Is it possible that they're biologically related? Irrelevant. Anyway, many years later, Patrick passes away and his two sons take over his casino empire. Unfortunately, one of their casinos burns to the ground and they have to file an insurance claim. When they discover that their claim has been denied, they vow to track down the insurance agent responsible and make him pay. They manage to have this agent kidnapped and brought to the middle of the desert, but they will not be prepared for the magical presence that comes bearing a cherry pie.
You're right, I don't know this.
Yeah, it's all that's missing is coffee black as a moonlit night.
Thank you.
This is Twin Peaks: The Return.
This is Twin Peaks: The Return.
Jim Belushi very memorably appears in that as a co-owner of a casino.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's even now, having heard this scenario, there is so much about those circumstances that does not reveal.
Yeah. It's like you could hear all of this and then go watch the Twin Peaks: The Return, the revival season 3, and I have pretty much revealed nothing.
Yeah.
Because that, obviously, it being Twin Peaks, there are million things happening at any given time.
Yeah.
I think this is a very vital thread, and Belushi plays a very vital character that helps get our main character from Twin Peaks to where they need to go,
Mhm.
but there's still a lot that can happen.
Wow, well done.
This was Dougie's suggestion, but I rolled with it.
Great
Dougie,
job, Dougie.
thank you. Love it. And well done, by the way.
Yeah.
Madeline. Very nice.
I have one I have to share.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
So we-
do it. Go.
Do
go.
it.
Let's pretend that Little Shop of Horrors, that the year is 1964, because we think it's, it's
Yeah.
early 60s. And, they run off into the sunset and they find their little house and the little plant is outside. But who knows what really goes on with the plants. It sort of seems like perhaps it's not strong enough to take over the world and it's just a sweet little garden variety.
Mhm.
But, as much as we want to believe in true love and, that these young kids are going to make it, life happens, right? And people have their stuff. Audrey, as much as she wants to, have turned a new leaf. And same with Seymour, like attracts like, but also those magnets can repel each other.
Of course.
And so sadly, 10 years later, it's 1974, they split up. And, another 10 years later, let's say they're 20 years old, right? So now you got a 40-year-old Seymour Krelborn, and he gets a job as an accountant. And he's living in a high rise, and he sees this woman across the way. And for a moment, he hasn't opened his heart in this way since this troubled time down on Skid Row with that plant and Audrey. But he sees something in this woman across the hall who's an artist and a musician.
Cellist.
Lights a spark, a cellist. I mean, the instrument of the soul.
Oh, I know.
The instrument of love. He falls madly, madly in love with her. And, some things happen with, ghosts taking over Manhattan for a while. But then
small details.
you can't convince me then that another few years later, he moves out to the suburbs and he's like, you know what? Manhattan is not for me.
No.
I think a lot of crazy things, supernatural things are going on in the city. I got to get out of here. I got to go. I live in Beacon, New York, which is upstate. And maybe he, gets on the Hudson River line and, finds himself in Westchester and he settles down and he realizes, his intelligence and his genius behind growing these plants, he really is a scientist.
Mm.
Yeah.
He really is. He can make things giant like Audrey II, but he actually has found a way to make things tiny. And now here he is a few years later and he has a new family and he's up in the attic tinkering around and he's made this laser and he's convinced that he has got the next great thing. But he goes out of the house and his kids fiddle around with it and the baseball and the rest and the kids. He's saying, he's getting on the phone and he says, honey, I shrunk the kids. Because you can't convince me that Rick Moranis is not the same person in every movie, and that these are not. This is not just one man's life of tragedy and supernatural scientific horrors.
Oh
he
my
has
God.
lived a life.
He
Yeah.
really has.
Poor guy.
We always love a two-movie unlikely shared universe. I mean, technically
Absolutely.
three if you count the one we're originally discussing.
Oh
but-
yeah, it's a triptych.
Very
Will,
well
Will, that was remarkable.
But
Also,
phenomenal.
any way we can talk about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, I am
Absolutely.
there for. That was such a formative film for me.
Can that count as a body horror movie?
Oh, I mean, I hate always leaning on this, but it's like really true. When you become a dad, that scene with the Cheerios and that kid crying for help and his dad about to eat him, it's like
So, yes.
terrifying to
So
me.
100%. Because we've occasionally been like, do we do a body horror cycle? Would
Yo,
it be too much
bring
of the same thing
on
over and over again?
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
This is a good way to break it up.
Let's
I mean,
go.
Little Shop of Horrors is also the same year as The Fly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Another
Oh.
great body horror film.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and there's I think Little Shop of Horrors doesn't get a makeup Oscar nomination, but The Fly wins an Oscar
I think
for its
deservedly
makeup.
so.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, The Fly, Little Shop, and Aliens all in the same year. Wow, a lot of messy practical effects.
What a year.
Very true.
Well, before we end this unlikely shared universe segment, we have to acknowledge Mr. Mushnick is really named Cosmo Castorini, and
That is true.
is also works as a plumber and to support his family in Brooklyn Heights.
I did establish this during our Moonstruck episode. Yes.
Yes,
I love that. Any last things that we want to say about Little Shop of Horrors?
I'm grateful to have really discussed it because I think that I felt a little more critical of it individually, when I just had my own thoughts going around in my head before we really put everything in context and also put all of our minds together on this. And I think we really gave it a treatment that I am satisfied with and will take with me to any subsequent experiences of the movie or of things of its conventional aesthetically nature, but offbeat in content nature. Nature pun very intended. Yeah.
I had a blast coming back to this. I thought it
Same.
was really sweet. I loved the new layers of capitalism and greed and how the medium of film is so good with close up, and the faces of Rick Moranis and Ellen Greene are just there waiting for us to fall in love with them. I feel like I was their hook, line, and sinker, and I had a great time with this. We talked about the practical effects. They were phenomenal. I think it really scratched that itch for me too. All around, this one was a real delight. So I'm glad we did it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
absolutely.
me, it's just always a joy to just be in musical material that everything works and that every song is earned and well placed. It is the map for good musical writing and why things are musicals and why musicals work when it's right. And I understand when it is wrong, it can be wrong and it can feel eggy and cringy. But wow, like when it gets it right, and you have that crane pull back and suddenly Seymour, and there's just some stuff it really transcends. Yeah, so it's always just a joy to be inside that score and just to see well-made songs telling a well-made tale.
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly well-made and beautiful movie that I really enjoyed revisiting, and will probably try to rewatch more often now, because I think it's been over a decade since I've seen it, and I think that was a mistake in my life. I want to revisit this every few years for the rest of my life, because I love this movie, and I do think I have this strong personal connection to it. I have this history with it, but I also I don't think that makes me biased necessarily. I still think it's a very well-crafted, well-performed, like competently made movie.
Yeah.
Totally,
May it always
totally.
stay in your top 4.
Yeah. What else am I going to bump?
I know.
Gotta rewatch Before Sunrise.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
good.
Will, I just want to say a huge thanks. Thank you so much for staying up with us and talking about this. Is there anything you want to plug? You have the floor. Where can people find you?
Sure. Well, find me on Instagram at Will C Reynolds is a great way to be inside my world. I would love for you to check out my musical, The Violet Hour, that is based on a play called The Violet Hour by Richard Greenberg, who wrote Take Me Out and 3 Days of Rain. And we're working to bring that show to Broadway, but we have a concept cast album, actually, to just connect it all to Little Shop of Horrors, starring Jeremy Jordan, who came into the role of Seymour in this latest revival that is still running off Broadway. And so you can hear Jeremy Jordan and Tony winner Santino Fontana and Erica Henningsen Tony winner Brandon Uranowitz and Soleil Pfeiffer, and it's orchestrated by Charlie Rosen, and we've had over 2 million streams, and it keeps on trucking. And so we're working to bring that show to Broadway. It's a 5-person musical. And yeah, I mean, just find me there. I have a website, Will Reynolds Online. You can find me there too. But yeah, find me on Instagram. That's probably the best way.
I love it. I've had the pleasure of getting to hear some music from The Violet Hour. It's fantastic. If I haven't already made it abundantly clear, Will is one of the most talented people walking the earth today. So we are delighted to have had you to talk about this. Thank you.
And can I plug one more thing? I just realized, because I was like, wait, I play this music all the time. So I co-host something called Broadway in Beacon, which is a monthly open mic that we do up here in Beacon. And so people bring their music and sing, and I sight read and play for my life, and I write opening numbers, and we do a Mad Lib at the top of the second act. We do a sing along, and we have special guests, and we have businesses in town that sponsor us, and we do special kind of content for them online. But the show doesn't go by where I'm not playing Suddenly Seymour. Like that usually is always happening. Somebody does feed me. And then I also, I do the concert work with Broadway star Patty Murin. And Patty has inside our set that where I'm actually flying to West Palm Beach tomorrow to do 2 concerts with Patty. And Will Van Dyke, who's an incredible musical theater composer, but also is the MD of this revival of Little Shop on Broadway.
Oh, man, it all comes back. That's amazing.
No, it's all crazy. But so Will Van Dyke, off Broadway. He wrote a mashup of Somewhere That's Green and Part of Your World for a concert of Patty that they did at 54 Below. And so I will be playing that on Friday and Saturday night in West Palm Beach, and it's a really brilliant mashup of the 2 songs where it's awesome. Come see Patty and I whenever we're doing our concerts. We do a lot of stuff around the country, and she's phenomenal. She was the original Anna in Frozen on Broadway, and yeah. But Broadway and Beacon, you want to come up and sing if you're in New York area, get on the train, and we'll sing some show tunes. It's a blast.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad. It sounds like this conversation was a bit of a primer for what's coming up for you, man. I love that. Dude, thank you so
Thank you.
much.
This is a blast.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Good night. Well, listeners, the next time you hear from us in this cycle of offbeat musicals, if you know our usual flow, we've just done our Viewnanimous, which we've all seen. So now we're going to be discussing a movie that we, as of this recording, have not yet seen, our mise en scene, if you will. And that film, I'm going in truly ice cold to this. Maybe the most ice cold I've ever come into any movie we've ever discussed.
Same.
We are going to discuss a Japanese film from 2001 called The Happiness of the Katakuris. It's directed by Takashi Miike, who I and probably many others know as the director of Audition, the famous J-horror film from the late 1990s. But this, I think that what we've heard going in is that if you like a movie such as House, then this is kind of up your alley too. We'll see next time you hear from us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Dougie loves this movie, but I've never seen it. This was his suggestion for this cycle. I'm really glad we landed on this one for the mise en scene. I feel like we're really going from the most populist pick that we're doing this cycle to the most obscure cult pick.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited. And I did order this on Blu-ray from Crunchyroll this week.
Ooh.
And it's actually supposedly hard to find, but Crunchyroll had a few in stock. So it will be here in time for me to watch this weekend. So if anyone needs to borrow it, remember, I have a collection of weird movies, including this one. I'm so pumped.
Cool. And this one's also available on Archive.
It is also on Archive.
Yeah. So if you're one of our diehard listeners and you're like, okay, movie that you guys haven't seen, most of the Western world maybe hasn't either, you have the ability to see it on archive.org. So I similarly ice cold on this one. I'm very excited though, knowing that it's a Dougie pick speaks volumes. And let's go.
Totally.
Yes.
Well, in addition to this podcast, you can follow us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can contact us via email. We would love to hear from you. Write to us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. If you're on Letterboxd, you can follow me, Madeline, at Patroness of Cats.
Or you can follow me, Julian, at Julian_Barthold.
And you can't follow me because I'm not on Letterboxd, but that's okay.
Maybe someday.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe
A
someday.
bonus episode we keep talking about doing and haven't done yet.
Well, if you are listening to us for the first time, thank you so much for finding us. And if this is the 7th or the 8th or the 80th time that you've listened to us, thank you for sticking with us. That really means a lot. And we've really grown to love doing this. It means the world to us that we have a budding listenership.
Yes, and if you haven't already, we ask you return listeners to please write us a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. This is one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and help our podcast take its next steps. Or you can keep it grassroots and tell a friend to tell a friend about the Sleepless Cinematic podcast. That helps too. In other words, feed us, listeners!
But whatever they offer you, don't feed the plants.
Don't feed the plants.